for me. So I'm pretty delicate in that arena. Not
Right.
really a vape girl. Occasionally she likes her air graft, but like not really. Love tinctures, sure. But I like home rolled joints.
Oh, yeah.
But since COVID happened, and as a European, maybe you won't judge me, I'm smoking spliffs.
I am not judging you at all.
Okay, great. I'm going to put a little wacky tobacco in my joints, and I love it.
Yeah.
I love it so much. This combination is intoxicating purposefully.
Do people judge you for it here? They don't think it's cool?
I think like in the cannabis space, I feel like it's a no-no for me as, you know, as a voice of weed to mix my weed with anything else. I've even like mixed cannabis with herbs, lavender, rose petals, that kind of thing. And I've gotten tisk for that by really highbrow connoisseurs out there in the world. So
don't you
it might be a cardinal sin. Yeah.
But you like to put yours on tobacco.
Yeah, I like to put tobacco in my joints.
Yeah, you know, this is how we grew up. I'd never seen anybody smoke just a pure rolled joint full of marijuana until like I got to Texas.
Okay.
It was back in England. Everybody would roll their own cigarettes, and we'd have, you know, pouches of tobacco, and it would always roll really nicely because it was slightly wet, and the papers were always really dry and crunchy. And then you'd get a little bit of hash and you'd burn it, and it was called solid, and you'd take a corner of it and crumble it onto your tobacco. Or you would get like green, you know, cannabis bud, and you'd snip it with scissors, and you just like nobody'd ever heard of a fucking grinder back then. Like we were like, we don't know how to do this, like just chopping it up. And so you'd have these massive chunks of flour, and so it was this really badly rolled, crumpled, but you know, it did not take much to get you high off that. And I think it's because the cannabis plus the tobacco have like a double intoxicating effect. Like they really do enhance each other.
Oh, totally. Yeah. It tends to be a bit of a stronger situation.
Yeah.
But it does like mediate a little bit of the intensity of cannabis sometimes. So if I am trying to, like, if I want to smoke and then smoking a straight up cannabis joint will probably thwart my process a little bit. But if I mix it with something, basically I'm cutting it. I'm diluting with tobacco. But I do know that that's the European way. So yeah, I do feel really I feel like I fit in with the Euros when
you should feel cool
when I take out my spliff.
So you use it recreationally, you use it before you write, you said, so you sort of use it like creatively, and you use it a little bit spiritually. And I know you're into yoga, so do you use it for your yoga practice as well?
Oh, Lord, of course I do. There is nothing better than stoned yoga. And again, for me, it's that, as we were discussing with anxiety, a little bit is good, too much can set you over the edge.
Yeah.
When it comes to embodiment, and this is the same like when you're using cannabis for pain, like a little bit good, a lot can actually trip you up and create more pain for you. So when it comes to yoga, like a little bit goes a long way for me to really drop into my body and my sensory experience and feel like I can just even feel like more creative with my movement and my ability to flow my limbs. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
I think it takes it to a different place. It makes it much more easy for me to focus on my breath. I used to go to this yoga place in San Francisco, and I would show up, I'd drive there, I'd smoke a little bit in my car, and then I'd go into the lesson. And after a few times of doing this, I started to get to know the yoga instructor, and I thought I could be cool. I could just tell her, right, like what I'm doing. And so she's like, what do you do? And I'm like, oh, I'm at school here, you know, I'm studying biological anthropology and actually learning a lot about cannabis. So speaking of cannabis, I was sitting in my car smoking some right before I came in here. And I just tried to like drop it into conversation like that. And she did not give me a cool look. She was like, you tried too hard.
Well, non-judgment is a tenet of yoga philosophy. So poo-poo on her.
Just on her. She did judge me for that. So I didn't want to do it after that.
I had a yoga teacher when I went through yoga teacher training, he was my mentor. And I would also show up to class thinking it was my little secret until one day he made me go up to the front of the classroom to model a posture for the entire room. And I was like, okay. And when I did it, he was like, this is what we call the sativa pose to the whole class. He was pranking me in front of everyone. It was really funny, but I was so embarrassed.
My
embarrassed. But he was cool. It was worth it. It was fine.
Did you just carry on after that? Like, fuck it, I'm stoned and I'm
I guess everyone knows.
Yeah.
If they couldn't already tell. I must have literally smelled like weed in a yoga studio, which is, it's my beautiful youth.
That. Yeah. Seeps from your pores.
I've made the analogy before between cannabis and yoga that I think is really interesting that I just wanted to share.
Please.
That when people are new to yoga, they've never taken a yoga class before, there's a lot of intimidation and a lot of like, will the teacher like me? Am I going to do it right? Is this okay? Should I even go? Like, I don't want to ask questions. Maybe I just won't do it at all. Mm-hmm. It's always been intriguing to me, and I've heard it could be amazing for my body, but I'm just not going to do it. And I feel that there's a lot of similarities with people who are new to cannabis or haven't tried it before, is that there's this intimidation factor. There's so much information. Some people are so good at it, I might as well not even try. Mm-hmm. And the whole point of sharing that is that's not true. You should try it. Ask questions. It does do amazing things for you.
Absolutely. Come join our weird yoga circle. Yeah. So you do a lot of work on this, on your social media, and just you as a person, as a brand, trying to get rid of the stoner stereotype. It's so archaic. And as a lot of folks can tell, probably by listening to this podcast right now, stoners are very productive people. And there's a massive importance around getting rid of that sort of stereotype. How do you choose how you present yourself alongside being an image of somebody who's involved in cannabis?
Well, that has been a little bit of a difficult journey for me, to be honest. I am an actress. I'm a comedian. I moved to LA with great ambitions. And so I had a lot of fear when I started working for Mary Jane. As proud as I was, like, oh man, me and Snoop Dogg, as cool as I thought it sounded, I was really careful not to share. Thanks. Yeah. I was really careful not to share any of that content. And I didn't tell my parents, and I was very coveted about my own reality because I was worried that it would jeopardize entertainment opportunities for me.
Really?
And so there was like a lot of shame in being honest coming out of the cannabis closet for a while. And eventually I decided there's no hiding it. There's no hiding it anymore, Brooke. And beyond that, just feeling like it's my duty in some ways. It's my service in return to this plant that's provided so many opportunities and relationships and experiences for me and literally has like kept a roof over my head. So I'm indebted to this plant, and portraying her in the best possible light is of the utmost importance to me. And so that shame coupled with really reverence has made it so that I'm really careful with not like being grungy about my consumption, really trying to integrate a wellness perspective into what I do share and a lot of education. And it was never going to be my cup of tea anyways, but maybe I would be a little further along if I would just like put on a bikini and a flat brim hat and smoke out of a bong. You know?
That's what I always think. I'm like, really? What's holding me back?
What are we doing, Britt?
I'm so dumb. Yeah, life would be easier if I would just rip a dab in a bikini.
And if you could, we would all
I think
like and subscribe. So.
I think that phase of my life might have been over a while ago. But no, there's definitely this sort of weird fine line that you've got to not cross, when you're a cannabis journalist or a media personality, with not just being this stoner 24/7 on Instagram and like portraying that all I do is blow smoke at the camera and sit around in my room all day. Like, I do other things. I want you to see that I'm a productive member of society.
Yeah, and from a medicinal perspective, like, okay, so if someone smokes weed all day and they don't necessarily have bodily pain or symptom that ails them, they're a stoner. But if someone is in pain all day and they smoke weed all day, then that's perfectly fine and for good reason. And we release judgment around that. And I'm sure some people still view me as a stoner and there's like negative connotation to it. She's just doing it for fun. Like, but who cares?
And it's okay to smoke a little joint before you write. I think that's part of the creative
about weed.
Right, you should be smoking before you write, for sure.
It's how I connect.
So I'm interested in your documentary that you mentioned a little earlier, The Prisoners of Prohibition. Obviously, this is something that really matters to you, shining a light on the social inequities and the issues that are still facing a lot of people as we continue to legalize. Is this the sort of path that you'll continue to follow throughout your career? You think you're interested in that sort of angle of the cannabis industry?
Well, I would certainly love to not have to be as interested because, it takes care of itself. I would love for every state to implement social equity programs and actually stand by it, and for everyone to return home from prison who's serving time for cannabis. But until then yes, it will certainly be a very important part of just my heart. And I know I'm not the only one in this space. Of course, there's now dozens of brands that are literally like coming out all about, like, there's Farmer and the Felon, there's 40 Tons, there's Last Prisoner Project, there's all of these organizations that are not only working to help bring people home and provide legal counsel to help get people out of prison, but are just donating, just basing their brand off of raising awareness for the injustices happening in the cannabis space and donating part of their profits to help alleviate the issues. So it's a very curious thing to see happening right now. When we made the Prisoners of Prohibition documentary like 5 years ago, I remember we tried to get brands on board. We tried to make that a bigger production than it was. We wanted partners and cannabis brands, and people were really not ready for that message, or they weren't taking it seriously enough. Yeah. So I'm kind of grateful that there are all of these brands and organizations that are picking up a lot of the weight these days. Not that I'm saying like, oh, it's all on my shoulders.
No, but you guys are ahead of the time. You were definitely ahead of it. For sure. It was an important issue, and you were like, hello, can we talk about it? And they were like, maybe later. Maybe after I've made all my money, we can talk about it.
Yeah,
but precisely. That's so important. Folks like you that care about these things, bringing them to the forefront.
How could you not? I mean, it's this really, and I remember having screenings of our documentary where we would screen the doc, which was pretty freaking heavy, and simultaneously have a cannabis brand there that was like giving out joints to everyone. And so everyone was like super stoned while watching this documentary. And I was like, these things don't really mix, ironically. No. Not the perfect mashup, but yeah, there's that does weigh heavy on my heart to think about. Yeah, that I'm like a white chick that's making cannabis content in California, and how cool is that? And there are 40,000 people serving time for cannabis crimes right now, and that easily could have been me or my peers or my dad or my mom. That could have been so many people that I know, and it's just time that has made those crimes and what I'm doing now a career.
As a fellow white chick in the cannabis space, I feel you. It's something that I care a lot about, and that at the same time, I feel like I have no space to talk about at all. But I spoke to one of the former Boston Globe cannabis reporters, and she gave me some great advice about it. And she said, I know that I've taken a job that a lot of people of color, journalists of color, could have taken and could have told some great stories about. And the fact that I got the job as a white person just reminds me that I am still on a pedestal and that I still need to help others up here. And so now that I'm up here, and now that I've got the platform that I've gotten, that I can speak about cannabis, what I need to do is create that platform for other people and hand my mic over as much as I can.